Well, I see the numbers are still climbing. This is a popular topic. We also have lots of information to cover. And so, without further ado, let's get started talking about how to build muscle at any age, the why, the how. And this is a topic that I find personally very interesting. It certainly motivates me. And I try to walk the talk on this one because of its importance. And we're going to have about 45 to 50 minutes worth of information. Actually, this is the first time I've presented this specific topic in this way. So I don't have the time down pat, but about 50 minutes we're aiming for, plus time for questions afterwards, because I know there's always lots of questions. You as a group, Healthy Planet, always have lots of questions. So I'm happy to dig into those at the end of the presentation. Welcome to you wherever you are in the country. I think mostly in the province of Ontario, but I know we do tend to get webinar participants from coast to coast, and always delighted to have so many people taking time out of your busy schedules to be proactive about your health. And this is a topic that pertains to longevity, as well as energy and wellness, today and into the future. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you have specific questions as we go along, feel free to type those into the chat area. I'm not always able to see those at the time, but I'll be able to get to the questions at the end of the presentation. I won't be able to use the raised hand function with the number of people that we have online, but I'll do my best to get to all of your questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so without further ado, let's get going. I didn't introduce myself. I'm naturopathic Dr. Kate Rayome. I'm a graduate and former faculty member of the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. I'm the author of this book, Vitamin K2 and the Calcium Paradox, How a Little Known Vitamin Could Save Your Life. And I am definitely interested in all things health and wellness, but as well how we can live as well as possible, as long as possible. Longevity runs on both sides of my family, which makes me very lucky, but I also have seen people who didn't necessarily age well in the last decade or two of their lives. And so this is something that motivates me. In terms of how well we can live for as long as possible. And so this is an important topic, and lots of really interesting growing research in that area. I wouldn't say there is one fountain of youth per se, but certainly maintaining healthy muscle, there is a lot of research around its importance for our longevity. So why are we talking about this? Why does muscle matter? You may have heard that muscle loss naturally, well, you could say naturally if you don't take steps to minimize or mitigate the process, muscle loss will gradually begin as early as our 30s. When we're in our kids, we're growing, kids and teens, 20s, we tend to maintain muscle mass, but without taking any steps, when we hit 30 and onwards, we'll gradually start to lose muscle. And this is a process called sarcopenia. It's only about 1% per year, which doesn't really seem like a lot. But as the decades go by, that eventually can lead to decrease in strength and mobility. Another word for this is frailty. And increase that in turn leads to an increased risk of falls and fractures. Reduces your metabolic rate because muscle helps you burn calories. And so you're likely to, as you lose muscle, you're gaining fat. Even if the number on the scale is staying the same, chances are you're trading muscle for fat. You have a higher risk of chronic conditions. You have impaired immune function and recovery from illness or injury. And this is something that really motivates me personally. You will end up with a decline in cognitive health and a decrease dementia risk. My dad had Alzheimer's, so I'm motivated to do anything I can to prevent that. And there's a ton of really interesting and compelling and a growing body of research to show that when you build your muscles, you build your brain. So it's pretty easy. Well, not easy, it's simple. That doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. Of course, we have to put work into it, but these are all many reasons to build muscle. It's not about necessarily, looking, swole or bulked up, but all these kinds of factors that have to do with longevity. And I think even just the brain health part of it is really motivating and compelling. So muscle mass and brain health, I'll say a few more words about this because this is, like I said, growing evidence. A lot of people haven't necessarily heard about. Strong muscles help to support a healthy brain in a number of ways, in a number of areas. The exercise, of course, it helps to improve blood flow to the brain during exercise and enhances oxygen and nutrient delivery to the brain. But muscles act as an endocrine organ. They release components called myokines that help protect brain function. Higher muscle mass is associated, as I mentioned, with a lower risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And resistance training in a number of different studies has been shown to improve brain function for the short and long term. People who undergo resistance training have been shown to have improvements in brain function at the end of, say, the 12-week training program. And then again, a year later, people's exercise levels and even muscle mass in midlife can determine and can have an influence and a predictive factor to their cognitive health decades later. And it literally is never too late. I'll explain and share some really interesting, there's research showing people undergoing strength training at any stage of life helps to improve brain health, and often those effects will last. So, next time you're at the gym pumping iron, people are you here to get bigger biceps? You can say that you're there to get a bigger brain. So, good news. Sarcopenia, this what is called natural muscle loss, can be slowed, avoided, and even reversed at any stage of life. Obviously, very simple strategies: exercise, muscles are a use it or lose it kind of thing, and nutrition. You need adequate protein intake, of course, but there are other nutrients as well that can help the body make the most of the exercise that you're performing. Talk a little bit about mitochondria, which are the energy centers, powerhouses, batteries of our muscle cells, as well as brain cells and all throughout the body. And so we know that starting early provides long-term benefits, but to emphasize the point, it's never too late to begin. Here is one of the most inspiring people online, as far as I'm concerned. I minimize my social media in terms of trying to keep things positive, as we know that can get in your head, but there are certainly some very positive influences online. And this is Joan McDonald. She is from Cobourg, Ontario. You can find Joan at Train with Joan on Instagram. She's also on Facebook, and she has a great social media presence. And these are pictures here of Joan. She's based in Cobourg, which is sort of near Kingston, Belleville area. And here was Joan at 70 years old. And you might say she was a fairly typical 70-year-old person, carrying about an extra 60 pounds on, half a dozen different medications, the normal things we would expect people at that age to be on for blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar, all these kinds of things. And I don't know exactly what the tipping point was. I think a doctor who recommended yet another medicine, and she, Joan thought, this is, where does it end? This seems a bit nuts. And so she started exercising when she was 70. And of course, it takes time to see results or notice results. And it took about 2 years for Joan to transform her body, but she continues with that process. And here's my slides. And on the right here is Joan at 76. And I would love to look like Joan at 76. Frankly, I would love to look like Joan right now. Joan put a lot of work into this in terms of, time, strength training, as well as optimizing nutrition. And I find her to be an inspiration, because I'm sure Joan would say if she can do it, anybody can do it. And she's definitely somebody who inspires me, and she's worth a follow on Instagram or your social media platforms. So just to keep in mind, it is never too late. a few weeks ago, I was visiting an aunt of mine in England, and she's 95 and lives independently, sharp as a tack, but she's quite frail, as you might expect for a 95-year-old. Now, my aunt will be the first person to admit to you that she hasn't exercised in 20 years. So although she is her cognitive function is very good, which is wonderful. She has trouble getting around without somebody, holding her hand because her leg muscles are very weak, which will happen if you haven't exercised in 20 years, and especially with advanced age. And so I wonder, what if she would be able to be more independent. We went out to a garden center, but she wasn't able to walk around very much. And if she'd continue with the exercise. Still not too late. Of course, anybody who wants to undertake an exercise program should check in with their doctor and make sure that there aren't any contraindications to that. But the point is that it's never too early or too late. Okay, there's a few more aspects. It's not just about strength, as we age, balance, flexibility, coordination. These are all important in terms of overall health. There are various correlations between that and cognitive function, ability to not fall and resist falls, etc. And so how do you measure this? Balance is important, flexibility, strength is important. It turns out is a simple way, relatively simple test. Hopefully everybody can do, not right now, but maybe after this webinar, called the Sitting Rising Test, SRT. Sometimes it's called the Sit to Rise test, either way, SRT for short. And it's a quick assessment of strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination that is backed by many published studies, including many long-term published studies. They will periodically put out new studies where they've looked at different people, different age groups for 10-year stretches, and show that this test was originally developed as a predictor of longevity and does seem to work that way. It's scored from 10 to 0 based on your ease of sitting down and then standing back up without using any kind of assistance from a chair or your hands or knees. Lower scores are associated with a higher mortality risk in multiple studies. And so people with a low score on this test are less likely to be alive or more likely to be in rough shape at the end of any stretch they've looked at. These are typically done in 10-year stretches, and they've looked at people from middle age onwards, and it seems to be a predictor of your overall fitness as well as longevity. So how does this test work? You go from standing, so the figure on the left, standing, to sitting down on the ground. Now, cross-legged, you don't have to go cross-legged, but it's pretty much the only way to do this test and get the perfect score. And then from sitting, standing back up on your feet without using a hand, a foot, a knee. So you start standing up with a score of 10. If you can sit down without either falling over or needing a hand or a knee or a foot to get you down on the ground, you get 5 points. And then if you can stand back up without needing any assistance, you get another 5 points for a perfect score of 10. If you need a hand to push yourself down or to push to get yourself up, you lose a point. So the scoring down here should be -1 point. If you need to lean over on your knee to get up, that's another point. If you need to lie down on a form, it's another point. Or if you need a chair, hand on a knee, or side of the leg. If you get up, but then you do a big wobble before you catch your balance, that's a point off. And so it goes all the way down to 0. You subtract. So a 10-point scale, they take off half a point for loss of balance. Sorry. So you can get maybe a 9.5 on this if you've just wobbled at the end of it. So this is just again, very simple but evidence-based test that you can perform. And I think it's interesting that I know I used to be able to do this test well and then tried it again this year and it didn't go so well. Getting down was fine. Getting up was a challenge. And so now I'm practicing by sitting down on a few small books. Sometimes that's easier to start with than right down on the floor, or just basically, practice You can try this a few times every day. First, you might need assistance and see if you can improve it involves strength, flexibility, balance, and coordination. So many different aspects of fitness. Okay, so I already explained how the SRT works, starting with a score of 10, standing up, sitting down, and getting back up without using any assistance. And they'll, by the way, be a handout. I think, Carla, if we're able to download the handout at the end, it explains the SRT test. Okay, so obviously one of the, and I mentioned here why the SRT matters is because it reflects overall musculoskeletal health. Lower scores are linked to greater risks of falls, disability, and even early death. And it highlights the importance of maintaining your flexibility, strength, core stability, leg stability, and balance. And so this is, and it's kind of fun in terms of a simple thing that you can do to measure your overall fitness. Okay, so let's talk about exercise first. Of course, now I am not an exercise physiologist or a personal trainer per se, but I will cover some of the basics of exercise, and for the particulars of how to maintain your muscle mass, it is worth speaking to a physiotherapist or an exercise physiologist or personal trainer, depending on where you are in your fitness journey. Certainly, if you're new to strength training, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to the gym. Got lots of pictures here of people at gyms. But you can do a lot, especially early on, with body weight exercises. So these are things we can be doing at home, the kinds of things we did during COVID. There are free apps or inexpensive apps that can help work you through body weight exercises, or using simple exercise equipment, things like bands and medicine balls. So this kind of strength training is very important and can be very effective. And certainly if you're still starting out, that's a great way to start. So you want to increase your muscle mass and strength. This is, what we're talking about here. At least 2 sessions per week, targeting major muscle groups. And again, I won't go into the specifics on in terms of what a particular workout is going to look like for you, because that's going to vary widely depending on where you're starting, your level of fitness, potentially your age, for example. So you need some personalized help with that, but at least 2 sessions per week targeting major muscle groups. So legs, back, arms, you want to work on core. And you do want to have some aerobic exercise. And this, by the way, doesn't all need to take a very long time. Even with the aerobic exercise, or what we might call cardiovascular training, there's more research to indicate that a few short sessions, even as little as 12 minutes, with 3 1 minute into even 30 seconds to 1 minute more intense intervals in there, does as much for you as an hour of moderate exercise. And so keeping in mind with aerobic exercise that even a few short intense bursts can have the same benefits as spending longer time at a moderate pace. And then there's lots of things you can do for balance and flexibility. It's important to reduce fall risk, improve mobility. Of course, it will help you on that SRT test. Things like yoga, Tai Chi, any kind of Pilates, any kind of balancing exercises that you enjoy, or even just, again, there's free apps or YouTube videos that can walk you through balance exercises, standing on one leg while you're brushing your teeth, these kinds of things. Okay, so that is some sort of very general, broad strokes in terms of exercise. And being a naturopathic doctor, I'm going to move on to nutrition because, as I mentioned earlier, when it comes to, if we're just looking at muscle mass, there's exercise and nutrition. And so when it comes to nutrition, there are, an overall healthier diet, eschewing or eliminating highly processed foods, high glycemic index foods, foods that will spike your blood sugar, empty calories. And instead, we want to, of course, focus for muscle health on protein intake. Our muscles are made of protein, and we do need to be taking in a certain amount or minimum amount of protein to help offset the natural tendency to lose muscle. And especially if you're physically active, you need protein to help build and repair muscles. Every time you work your muscles, there's a little bit of breakdown, micro tears that happen in the muscles. And those, when they knit back together, that's what helps you grow and build your muscles, or at least maintain your muscle mass. And you need protein for this repair process. So how much? Well, we hear all kinds of recommendations, I think, on this, but to make the math very simple, roughly 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. Now, there will be recommendations for active people to have slightly more than that. For sedentary people, even a little bit less than that. But just for easy math, 1 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight, not per pound of body weight. You will just never have enough time in the day. You may have heard that, 1 gram per pound of body weight. But you just won't have enough time in the day to eat all that protein. So this is, you want to spread your protein intake across your meals, but to give you an example, a 150-pound person weighs 68 kilograms. So you take your weight, if you happen to know your weight in pounds, you need to convert it to kilograms. And that means 68 grams of protein daily. Now, again, there are some sources that recommend for very physically active people to be having 1.1 or 1.2 grams of protein. If you have no idea how much protein you're eating and have never really paid attention to it, starting with this 1 gram per day as a goal and see how you do with that is a great starting point. So let's say, what does this look like? And again, here's the calculating your protein needs. Convert your weight to kilograms. If you're starting with pounds, your weight in pounds divided by 2.2 equals your weight in kilograms. You could, do this online on your calculator. And then multiply your weight in kilograms, by 1. Like I said, it can be up to 1.2, some sources say, for very active people. So, but let's just take this example of the 150-pound person who weighs 68 kilograms. Taking in 68 grams of protein per day. What does that look like roughly? Well, here is a meal plan that contains 68 grams of protein. So breakfast was 2 scrambled eggs with some spinach and whole grain toast. There's 14 grams in there. Turkey and avocado sandwich on a pita for lunch. That's 20 grams of protein in there. A snack, cottage cheese with sliced cucumber or maybe some berries or fruit. 12 grams. Cottage cheese is usually a pretty good source of protein. The pressed cottage cheese, if you've ever seen it, it's kind of dry and crumbly, but very, very high. You're looking at like 27 grams of protein for half a cup in terms of cottage cheese. And dinner, grilled salmon with quinoa and steamed broccoli. There's 22 grams of protein right there. So that sounds pretty easy, but it does take some forethought and planning, especially with breakfast. For a lot of people, maybe not yourselves, maybe not people joining this webinar, but for a lot of people, breakfast tends to be a very low protein meal. Typical breakfast foods, things like, pancakes, bagels, muffins, waffles, cereal, all of those things that tend to be low or no protein. If you have 1 egg for breakfast, that's great, but an egg usually has 6 to 7 grams of protein. It's very good quality protein. I'll talk about that shortly. But if you're just having 1 egg in the morning, that's just 6 grams usually of protein. And so the point I'm trying to say here is that this often takes some planning in order to think about the meals you're going to have, the snacks you're going to have. And it's not that it's so onerous, but initially, especially if you've never paid attention to your protein intake, you'll have to spend a little bit of time familiarizing yourself with the protein content of foods. Fortunately, that's usually listed on labels of foods, or you can easily look it up. And then, plan out to have those things in the fridge or on hand or available, when you're eating out, and then go from there. And, this particular example menu doesn't contain any nuts and seeds. Those, a nut butter, for example, those would add in a little bit of extra plant-based protein. And by the way, this can be done, and I'll talk about that shortly, with a plant-based diet. Is definitely much more challenging. You have to spend a lot more time planning out your protein intake, but I'll talk about that shortly. So the point is that you want to calculate your protein needs for maintaining your muscle mass along with exercise, and then plan out what kinds of foods you might like to enjoy or have on hand to meet that, and how much of them you'll need to eat. And then it eventually becomes a lot easier or second nature in terms of getting your protein in. Okay, so let's say a few things about protein quality, just to understand a bit more. When you see protein content on a label, it doesn't necessarily always mean complete protein. So what does this mean? Complete protein is protein that contains all 20 amino acids, including all of the what are so-called essential amino acids that human beings need to utilize the protein and not create any imbalances with amino acids to help build muscles. For example, certain amino acids are better than others at building muscles, but in general, you need all 20 amino acids. And if you don't have them all there, then the body won't be able to efficiently utilize, and you can become imbalanced and even protein deficient. Even though you think you're eating protein, you're missing amino acids. So typically complete proteins are from animal sources. So when you have things like eggs and meat and fish and dairy, that contains all of those amino acids. Now, you can get complete proteins from plant sources, but you have to, as you may have heard, combine specific plants. So incomplete proteins contain fewer than 20 amino acids, or maybe they're missing some of the essential amino acids. So typically from single plant sources, say just rice, you may see some protein listed on the package of rice or beans, but that protein isn't complete unless those rice and beans are combined together. So you can combine different plant foods that contain amino acids, and you can find charts online in terms of which plant foods need to be combined. That can fill in the gaps of the missing amino acids. And once you have those there, then yes, the body will use that like a complete protein. So again, you can achieve this with a plant-based diet, but it does require a lot more planning and forethought, even more so than just calculating your protein needs. You have to make sure you're getting all your amino acids. So there's a step further there. Another aspect that relates to, completeness of proteins is biological value. There's sort of an overlap here. So biological value is a measure of the proportion of the protein that you absorb from a particular food and becomes incorporated into your body, for example, to support growth or help build your muscles. So there's three factors that go into biological value. Amino acid composition. So obviously a food that has all of the amino acids, all 20 amino acids and all of the essential amino acids, that will have a higher biological value than a food that is missing some of those amino acids. Now, once you combine those foods together, maybe you can move up in terms of how much the body can utilize this protein. Preparation as well. So whether something is cooked or raw, as a matter of fact, in certain cases, certain types of proteins, you will absorb and assimilate them better if they're cooked than raw. In general, eggs are better absorbed and assimilated when they're cooked versus taking them raw. There's reasons for that I won't get into, which is good because we mostly prefer eating cooked eggs. So biological value preparation can make a difference. And then vitamin mineral content. So to give you an example, a whole egg has a higher biological value than just egg white. That may sound weird because people think, well, egg white, it's so high in protein, it's pure protein, it's the perfect protein. A whole egg has a higher biological value than just an egg white because the egg yolk contains vitamins and minerals that helps your body assimilate the protein. So we do need vitamins and minerals to help assimilate protein. It's not just all about protein, but fortunately, the foods that are high in protein, like meat, for example, are often usually high in B vitamins, zinc, and other minerals that help us assimilate that protein. So I won't say too much more about biological value. I'll just show you very briefly a chart. In terms of biological value, it's a sort of a scale or a rating depending on these various factors that I explained, the amino acid content, the vitamins and minerals, how easy it's assimilated by the body. Whole egg at 100 is considered to be a perfect, or that's what they call, egg, the perfect food. Whey concentrates and isolates, depending on how they're produced, a very high biological value because they typically are assimilated easily into the body. Milk, if you can tolerate it, if you don't have an issue with dairy, is quite high. As you can see, egg white is further on down the list. 88 is still quite a good biological value, but it's not the same or as high as a whole egg. And then further on down the list, lots of high protein foods, cottage cheese, tuna, fish. And it's not like we always have to pick the foods that are at the very top of this list, but just to keep in mind, once you get down below, say, 60 or 50 in terms of biological value, you're going to have to start combining foods to get more utilization out of the protein in them. So that's just something to be aware of in the back of your head. So I'll say something about the role of protein supplements. Now, you can absolutely achieve most people, depending on your size, you can achieve the 1 gram of protein per kilogram body weight with careful planning and preparation. But for many individuals, either larger individuals, or if you find you're kind of challenged in terms of either meal prep, then protein supplements can, for a person who is exercising, or somebody who tends to have a smaller appetite, seniors, children even, can help meet protein needs very conveniently. And as you can see, I mentioned there, whey protein, very high biological value. It's a complete protein, has all the essential amino acids. It is rapidly absorbed. Lots of research on the benefits of it for preserving muscle mass, even associated with age. It's rich in the amino acid leucine, which in particular stimulates muscle growth. And there are plant-based proteins. So particularly when it comes to plant-based diets, I definitely recommend the plant-based protein supplements in terms of taking some of the guesswork out of combining proteins, as well as some of just the simple work that you need to do. It can be very handy for vegans and vegetarians to have combinations that contain appropriately balanced sources of plant proteins like pea, hemp, soy. Soy is almost complete, but it's missing the amino acid, typically methionine, so you need something that can provide that. So combining these together. And so plant-based protein supplements can be very handy. I mean, you don't have to be following a plant-based diet to take them, but certainly for vegans and vegetarians, that can really make a big difference in meeting protein intake. So I'll just show a couple of examples here in terms of a good price, high amounts of protein, reasonable amounts of fat and carbs, no artificial sweeteners, bovine growth hormone and BSE free, sourced from grass-fed cattle, high concentration BCA or branched chain amino acids. So these are the muscle building amino acids. And so we know that whey protein has been popular with bodybuilders for decades, but it's not just for bodybuilders, even average individuals, particularly the concentrate forms. There's different ways of making whey protein. There's isolates where you remove certain types of whey. By the way, what is whey? I don't know if everybody knows, but when you take milk and you let it either ferment or separate, there will be a portion that sort of looks like serum. As a matter of fact, the French word for whey is lactoserum, so lactoserum. And that really explains what it is. If you've ever had yogurt in the fridge, And it starts to separate and you get that yellowish liquid on top. Don't pour that off, stir that back in. That's the whey. There's lots of protein in that. So it's a natural byproduct of the dairy industry, cheese making, yogurt making. And so then this whey can be concentrated, basically kind of dehydrated. And in that concentrate, you will have what are called whey subfractions, different types of whey proteins that some help build muscle, some help with immune function. And so I like a whey concentrate for, general all-purpose. Yes, it helps to build muscle, but it has other benefits. So you can throw a scoop of this either into a shake or cereal, oatmeal, if you want to bump up the protein content of your meal. In terms of options, I won't go too detailed on the specifics, but lots of options for people following plant-based diets, or maybe for whatever reason you just want to have a plant-based protein. Maybe not everybody does well with whey. Most people do, but some people who have dairy sensitivities don't do well with whey. Here's a few options here: the Whole Earth and Sea fermented organic proteins and greens, providing 21 grams of vegan protein per serving. Or there is the Natural Factors vegan protein in a couple different flavors, providing 22 grams of plant-based protein per serving. That's sourced from pea, brown rice, hemp, and chia. And so again, these are options to get in 20 grams or more of protein in a meal. Okay, so as I mentioned, in addition to exercise, we know is important, protein intake is important, but there are other ways to help optimize our body's response to the exercise and nutrition, so the exercise and the protein intake, some of which are really hot, really popular, and so I want to definitely dive into that a little bit and bust some myths or tell you what the truth is about these things. Let's start with creatine, because there's a big buzz around creatine right now. For good reason, to be honest. There's lots of interesting research coming out about creatine, a growing body of research about it. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about your mitochondria, because ultimately, when we build more muscle, we are making more mitochondria. This is part of why it's good for our brains, creating energy. A lot of the benefits that we get from exercise is we ultimately create more energy in the body when we create more mitochondria. You have about 10 quadrillion mitochondria in your body, and that's a remarkable number that's hard to wrap your mind around. And these are, as explained, batteries, powerhouses, little engines. I like the engine analogy for the most part. I'll tell you why later. And an average cell can have a couple thousand mitochondria in it, but a very active cell like a brain cell, it's always doing something, a muscle cell, a liver cell, a beating heart cell, can have 100,000 mitochondria in a single little cell. The mitochondria use over 90% of the oxygen that we breathe. So every time you take a breath in, that oxygen, 90% of it, the point of breathing is to take in oxygen for it to be delivered to our mitochondria. They take that oxygen and burn it, use it to make ATP energy. That is what keeps us alive. The reason why you don't stay alive very long if you stop breathing is because your mitochondria stop getting oxygen. They stop making energy and you stop existing. So that's how that works. So mitochondria is why we're alive. They keep our heart beating and our brain working, and they make ATP energy that keeps us moving. So we can make more mitochondria in part by exercising. So that's pretty cool. Now, creatine. Why am I talking about this before talking about creatine? Creatine is a compound made from 3 amino acids. It is found in muscles and the brain. You can get small amounts of creatine from your diet, like meat and seafood. And creatine will go into muscle cells. It goes into almost any mitochondria, but in particular muscle cells and brain cells. And it will be converted to energy, to ATP in those cells. So creatine is a compound that the body will use to make energy. And supplementing with creatine, so as with everything else, we tend to make less of this as we age. But supplemental creatine has been shown to help improve muscle strength, size, and mass in conjunction with exercise. There's also really interesting emerging research about creatine's potential brain benefits. But there are a number, I meant to show two here. There's another one, Preferred Nutrition. It comes in a blue and white label. That is, I thought I had switched my slides, but I guess I didn't update it on this. So here's the Regeneralife, the Natural Factors Regeneralife, also the Preferred Nutrition in a blue and white label. They're both good options for what you want to look for is pure micronized creatine. And this has been shown to help ATP in muscles, fights age-related energy decline, increases in lean body muscle mass when used in conjunction with exercise, improves strength and performance in repetitive bouts of high intensity physical activity, so HIIT training, and new research emerging about potential brain benefits, things like increasing dopamine, enhancing cognition, memory, learning, and mental clarity. So really interesting that that's new research in terms of the benefits of creatine, but the benefits of it on muscle are well established. So the point is, do you need to take creatine if you're working out? No. But is it helpful, especially as we get older and tend to make less creatine, to take advantage of tools like this to make the most out of your workouts? Lots of research says yes, that is the case. So the International Society for Sports Nutrition has concluded that creatine is, quote, the most effective ergogenic nutritional supplement currently available to athletes, that is natural, in terms of increasing high intensity exercise capacity and lean body mass during training. In other words, they don't consider any banned substances, but the things that athletes are allowed to take certainly fall on this list. The American Dietetic Association, Dietitians of Canada, and the American College of Sports Medicine have all come to similar conclusions in terms of their position on creatine supplementation. So who would benefit from creatine? Anybody looking to start or who is engaging in physical training, fitness enthusiasts looking to enhance energy during workouts or post-workout recovery, individuals who want to maintain their lean muscle mass, anybody recovering from injury, looking to rebuild muscle mass, anybody looking or concerned about age-related muscle loss or sarcopenia, people who are feeling weak or fatigued, and new research suggesting that people who have concerns with cognition and memory due to the ability of creatine to help create ATP in brain cells and the mitochondria there. Vegans and vegetarians tend to have lower creatine levels because you don't get this in plant-based diets. And so it's something to consider. In terms of how much do you need to take? Typically, and the studies vary a little bit, 5 grams per day, so which would be 1 scoop of the powder. It has no particular flavor. It's quite flavorless, mixes easy. I've seen between 5 and 10 grams, depending on the study, how intensely active people are. There is also now, for a long time, it was suggested that for the first week, for the first 7 days, you do a loading dose of 4 scoops, so 20 grams per day. There does seem to be some conflicting evidence about whether or not the loading dose is really necessary. Some people swear by it. Some research suggests it's helpful. Others suggest it takes a little longer, but you don't need to do the loading dose. Some people find, especially initially with creatine, that it can cause water retention. So just be aware of that. And do check with your doctor if there's any reason for which water retention may be a problem. For example, if you have kidney function issues, just check with your doctor about that. But be aware that you may seem more just retaining more water for the first couple of weeks taking creatine. It should improve. It should go away. Some people as well suffer with can be some mild gastric upset if you take it on an empty stomach. So just be aware of that. Okay, next. Now, there's a lot going on in this diagram. This is not to overwhelm you. There will not be a test on this diagram. However, this big pink blob in the middle is a mitochondria, these bean-shaped structures that we find, like I said, 10 quadrillion of them in our body. The folded area inside are membranes. You can think of these as like little conveyor belts where the ATP is produced. And this diagram just goes to show that there are a lot of things that interact with and that could potentially be helpful for our mitochondria. If you look here, you can see elements of the Mediterranean diet. People are always talking about that Mediterranean diet being healthy. It's healthy for lots of reasons. It's also healthy for your mitochondria. Things like olive oil, tomatoes, the walnuts. It shows sunshine here as well. So healthy fats, both omegas as well as olive oil, vitamins and minerals, a variety of them, a variety of antioxidants, and things like resveratrol, green tea, tomatoes. So all of these have an effect on our mitochondria and all are beneficial. So any colorful fruits and vegetables, that color signals polyphenols, those are antioxidants. Those are all beneficial for our mitochondrial function. So it looks complex because it is, but it all boils down to the similar dietary advice you've heard of in terms of, nutritious, nutrient-dense diet with high in antioxidants and healthy fats. Obviously, protein does play a role here, but just to keep in mind, that is beneficial also for your muscle building. There are certain nutrients in particular that are beneficial in terms of helping your mitochondria produce as much energy as possible with as little free radicals as possible. So the reason I said earlier that I like the analogy of mitochondria as little engines, because they are sort of like little engines. Now, a well-tuned engine will produce lots of power with minimal amounts of exhaust. All engines will produce a little exhaust. That's normal. But a poorly tuned engine will produce not as much power and a lot more exhaust. So mitochondria are the same way. When mitochondria decline in their quantity or particularly their quality, then they aren't producing as much ATP and they produce a lot more free radicals. And so that's like your poorly tuned engine. So there are certain, every antioxidant will help the mitochondria do their job better. But there are certain antioxidants that we know are mitochondrial specific. So everybody's heard of coenzyme Q10. And you may have heard that coenzyme Q10 works in and around the mitochondria, helps us make energy. Coenzyme Q10 will go into the mitochondria and it kind of throws and catches electrons to help pass them down that conveyor belt, the electron transport chain, to make ATP. And as a bonus, it will grab any rogue electrons that happen to escape. The problem when you have electrons bouncing around to make energy is some of them are going to escape, and those are free radicals. So coenzyme Q10 helps to mop that up. Acetyl L-carnitine, I mentioned this. It's called the fat bus. It will drive around and pick up fatty acids and then drive them into your mitochondria so they can be burned for energy. So it helps you burn fat for energy. There's a number of other ones that I'll list here, but I specifically wanted to mention L-carnitine, this one that I called the fat bus or the fat shuttle. One of the most interesting studies I've ever seen, I love this one, was done in Italy on L-carnitine, including centenarians. So they only included participants in this trial who were 100 years of age and older. All the participants were between 100 and 106 years of age. And they took two groups of people and they had them walking every day. One group was given L-carnitine supplement and the other group was given a placebo in addition to their whatever regular diet got them to 100 years of age. And after 12 weeks of regular exercise, both groups improved because exercise is good for you and it will give you benefits no matter when you do it. But the group that got L-carnitine had more muscle mass and less fat mass, more energy and less fatigue than the group that got the placebo. So this shows that, first of all, it is literally never too late to make an improvement in your health. Exercise is wonderful, but all of the benefits, that more muscle, less fat, more energy, comes from more mitochondria. So a healthy diet's important, exercise is important, but there are certain nutrients that you can use to help it fine-tune the process and help take advantage of the exercise and the good diet. And so L-carnitine is one of these, and that is also in the combination that I showed here. Oops, let me back up here. So this combination is the mitochondrial energy formula has been shown to improve mitochondrial energy while reducing free radical output, help improve muscle strength and power, help maintain cognitive health and brain function, reduce symptoms of fatigue. So this would be something that's taken. It's a combination of CoQ10, acetyl-L-carnitine, glutathione, superoxide dismutase, some other antioxidants. Typically, it comes in either a powder or a capsule. For the powder, you get more CoQ10 in the powder. 1 scoop in the morning on a daily basis, or some people take it just before a workout, or some people take it in the afternoon instead of the afternoon coffee when they need a little bit of a pick-me-up. Then this is something that it does not contain caffeine. It's not a pre-workout in terms of a stimulant, anything like that, but it helps your body to make more, it helps your mitochondria to make more ATP. Okay, and then we're almost coming up on time. I'm just a couple minutes over what I thought I would be, but I just want to say one more thing about a nutrient called nicotinamide mononucleotide, or NMN. Neither the short form nor the long form are very easy to say, but this is essentially a metabolite, you could say, a form of vitamin B3. You can find it in broccoli, cucumbers, edamame, green vegetables. Also important to include lots of green leafy vegetables in your healthy diet. And it does a few interesting things, but NMN plays a role in supporting cellular energy metabolism in a different way than the antioxidants that I mentioned. It also plays a major role in cellular repair. So NMN helps to increase a molecule in the body called NAD. Where's my NAD? Oh, no, did I take my NAD slide out? NAD plus. And NAD plus plays an important role in cellular repair. So as we age, our cellular repair functions can slow down. And this NMN, this is not NMN, is a way to improve it. I think somehow my last few slides got mixed up. Here we go. So here's NMN Surge. It comes in 150 milligram or 300 milligram capsules. Quite a bit of research on the capsules, taking it on a daily basis, improvements in NAD plus levels, which in turn helps with cellular repair, glucose metabolism, and helping to maintain a healthy weight. Okay, so that's a little bit over time. So let me just get to questions here, 7:55. Let's just see questions in the chat. Okay, I have to scroll to the top. Oh, I like it when people say where they're logging in from. Charleston, South Carolina. How about that? Hamilton, local. It's my neighbor. Hi from the Hammer. Greetings from Ancaster. That's where I am. Oh, Goose Bay. Wow, we really are coast to coast, guys. Yellowknife. Will this help both men and women? Yes, it sure will. Bonjour from Montreal. Let me just scroll down. People from all over. Oh, I'm thinking that this comment about having followed her program for years so excellent maybe is about Joan McDonald. That is delighted to hear that. Oh, question here. Yes, I meant to mention this from Betty. Curious if Joan still requires all those medications after making those amazing changes. So she doesn't. That was one thing with her doctor's, blessing and consent. She was able to drop all of her medications. It's something you don't want to do on your own or without your doctor's advice, but that's the interesting thing is when you build muscle, get your systems back online, then things tend to stabilize. So she did not need that. Are we able to get a copy of this presentation? I do know that Healthy Planet will post a copy of the video. Oh, the handout can be downloaded here. Okay, great. Thank you, Carla. The handout can be downloaded as well. It's in the chat area. So questions here about specific strength training exercises. This is really, if you have specific health conditions or health concerns, injuries, arthritis. So this is where, we have over 300 people online tonight. I don't want to get into specifics, but definitely to work with either a physiotherapist or personal trainer or somebody that can guide you through appropriate exercises depending on your condition. Okay, more here about the, okay. Question here, what about the differences between men and women? Women do lose muscle faster and when we add in strength training. It's true that testosterone does help maintain muscle mass, and so it can be more challenging for women to maintain muscle mass, especially after menopause. And so that makes the muscle training and strength training even more important, arguably, for men or for women than men, although it's important for everybody. And so, you want to put as much effort into that. But yeah, for women, it'll be a little bit more challenging. Current body weight or ideal body weight. I think maybe we're talking about, getting 30 to 40 grams of protein at breakfast. Nice because you're strength training. That's great. So usually you base the protein intake on your current body weight, not necessarily a goal weight or anything like that. Curious to what you think about those newer egg bites that you can buy ready to go. Well, they certainly do seem to be a good source of protein. I don't know what other ingredients they have in them. They do unfortunately often have a lot of plastic involved. I don't love that, but they, as far as I know, are a good source of protein. I don't know the specifics in terms of ingredients in different brands. Oh, is there a sample meal plan? Oh, thanks, Lisa. That's a good idea to have a sample meal plan in terms of breaking down protein for vegetarians. That is a good suggestion that I will add into this presentation. Oh, question about how this can work with intermittent fasting. So that is definitely a challenge. Getting in, the amount of protein you need in the 8-hour fasting window is more challenging for sure. And so that requires planning or this is, where protein supplements may come in even handier because you can pack a lot into a single, say, meal or shake. Oh, I love this question here. Would eating 2 eggs, turkey, cottage cheese, and salmon all one day not be considered consuming a higher amount of cholesterol? Would this be safe for an older adult to consume, as many adults have high cholesterol? Great question, Julia. So it turns out that the cholesterol content of foods, for example, say, egg yolks for a long time got a bad rap because they contain cholesterol. But as I explained earlier, the egg yolk actually increases the biological value of your protein. First of all, it makes your whole egg is better assimilated by the body than just an egg white. And research has shown that actually consuming cholesterol doesn't affect or raise our cholesterol levels. As a matter of fact, if you try to eat a quote low cholesterol diet, like avoid cholesterol in your diet, your liver just has to make more cholesterol. It's actually more work for your liver. Because you need a certain amount of cholesterol to maintain your hormones, your cognitive function, all kinds of aspects of our health. So you don't have to worry about your cholesterol intake. If you're avoiding processed foods, avoiding fried foods, vegetable oils cooked at high temperatures, all of these things are a lot more problematic for your cardiovascular health than the cholesterol content of food. But if you want to, get your protein out of more plant-based sources, that's fine too. Okay, people weighing in about their breakfasts of 30 grams of protein. Yeah, Greek yogurt is another great source of protein. Do I have a link for complete versus incomplete proteins? Oh, that's a good question. I didn't have a link. I'll find one of those and add it into the presentation. I think I'm sure if you type it in, AI is going to tell you something. Who knows if that's right, but let's see here. People talking about what they're eating. Do you have any advice for someone who does not have an appetite and eat much during the day and the stomach is sensitive for any protein powder? So that's it's worthwhile seeing a naturopathic doctor, I would say, to find out what's going on with your appetite, is if there's a specific reason for that. Some people that's normal if that's always been the way. Other people, that's something that changes over time. So you want to look into the different reasons or causes behind that. Do I know if whey powder is usually pesticide free? Oh, that's a good question. So all of the powders I showed, both the whey and the protein powder, are tested by Ishura. So here's the Ishura logo here on the bottom right-hand corner. I normally talk about this, but because I was over time and rushing, I didn't mention it. So ISURA, you can find this either at the website, ishura.ca, or on the label of the products that are tested above and beyond the strict Canadian guidelines for 800 different possible contaminants. That includes pesticides. And so you can, so for the ones that I mentioned have this Ishura brand, yes, they are pesticide free because they've undergone this particular testing. That's actually really important when it comes to plant-based proteins. Both pesticides and strangely heavy metals, things like legumes, for example, can pull heavy metals from the ground. And so there has been some brands in the US of plant-based proteins that tested high in heavy metals in the past. So that's particularly why plant-based proteins, you want to look for this Ishura logo because they do extra testing. Lots of chit chatter about people's high protein breakfasts. I love it. And the good yogurts and the good Greek yogurts. Straining yogurt is a way to go too. Question here. Do you have any thoughts or knowledge on creatine and high blood pressure? No. I think it's possible that a new study may have come out very recently on that, but I'd have to double check on that and get back. It's not considered to be a caution that is listed on the label. Is synthetic creatine absorbed well by the body? Yes, so lots of research on creatine. There are amino acids that are usually combined through a fermentation process. That is a standard form that's used in research studies on muscle mass, energy, these kinds of things. Question, what about nitric oxide? I don't know what you mean in terms of what about nitric oxide? Let's see, I've heard that if we buy protein supplements, we should look at NSF certified. That's not familiar to me. National Sports Foundation, maybe? I don't think that's a standard certification. Question here. As far as weight loss, I was told not to use if you have more than 30 pounds to lose, maybe, but I don't know what that refers to. Oh, question. Can I talk about the natural factors of Regenilife mitochondrial energy product? Is it as effective Regenilife creatine product or differences? Oh, that's a very good question. You know what? These do different things. So the mitochondrial energy formula is a combination of nutrients, primarily antioxidants, but ones that work in and around the mitochondria to help improve mitochondrial efficiency. So they do help the mitochondria, as I mentioned, produce more energy, less exhaust. That is similar, but different mechanism of action. Creatine, the mitochondria will take and use as a form of energy. It doesn't act as an antioxidant. So I would say the two are complementary. Now, if your main goals are muscle building, or you're starting on your resistance training journey, creatine probably overall in terms of energy and muscle support, definitely a lot of research to support that. The mitochondrial energy formula product is for overall energy support. It supports your mitochondria. It doesn't build muscle per se. Oh, great question here from Michelle. What about high creatine levels due to high muscle mass and the GFR test done at the doctor's office for kidney function? Okay, so the kidney function test is actually something called creatinine, is what it's being tested for. And that is different than creatine. And so it should not have a relation or any effect on your kidney function testing. Question here about, I'm not sure what the question is, what to do for macular degeneration. Oh, it's a good question, although it's a whole other topic. Generally, lutein, zeaxanthin, these are the nutrients that are helpful for eye function. Oh, good question here. I didn't have the formula in terms of how much CoQ10, acetyl L-carnitine, glutathione. It depends if it's in the powder or the capsule. But the powder, in terms of the mitochondrial energy formula, has 300 milligrams of CoQ10 in it, 1,500 milligrams of acetyl L-carnitine. I'm stretching my brain here, and more for the glutathione. Those are the nutrients I can remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry I didn't put up the formula for that. Can people older than age 75 take it? Yes. Question here. I'd like to know the measure, how many milligrams in a scoop. Oh, okay, that was the question. So you can find that information on the Healthy Planet website. You can click on the product and you'll be able to see the label. Oh, here we go. NSF certified means it's been tested by an independent organization that verifies the product public health and safety standards and the product is safe and performs as claimed. Okay, so it sounds like something along the lines of the Ishura certification. Can you mix all the powders and what you're speaking about together in a shake? Yes, you can. What about taking ubiquinol? I heard it's better absorbed in older people than CoQ10. Oh, I'm glad you asked about that. So that is true to a certain extent. Ubiquinol is better absorbed than standard CoQ10, which is called ubiquinone, but it's not, it's about 25% better absorbed. That's also almost 25% more expensive. So you can get to the same levels. When you take CoQ10, like I said, as I mentioned, CoQ10 goes into the mitochondria and it throws and catches electrons to pass them down the electron transport chain. Depending on whether it's throwing or catching an electron, it transforms back and forth between ubiquinone and ubiquinol, depending on whether it's holding an electron or donating an electron. And so ubiquinol is somewhat more effective. It's also a little bit more expensive. Standard CoQ10 is a little bit more affordable. It will also get you there. And so I don't necessarily recommend ubiquinol across the board. if budget's, not a concern, by all means, get the ubiquinol. Otherwise, most of the research for CoQ10 is done on the standard ubiquinone form. Dangers of too much protein. That's a good question. It's not easy. There's lots of people that have been studied on high protein diets for a long time. Now, if you have compromised kidney function, do speak to your doctor before increasing your protein intake. That does not mean that a high protein diet is hard on your kidneys. It just means people who already have compromised kidney function can have difficulty with high protein diets. But other than that, unless you have existing kidney function concerns, you want to balance your protein intake with lots of water and lots of fiber for regularity. Okay, more people from all over the province and the country. Okay, question here. What are the most important supplements if I started with 2? It depends on, where you are in your fitness journey, and how much protein you're getting in. If you feel like you can meet your protein intake without a supplement, then great. Then maybe, and you might just want to start, if you're strength training, with something like creatine and start with that and see how you go. Is a protein-based diet help with osteoporosis also? Well, certainly maintaining your muscle mass really makes a big difference with osteoporosis, and strength training does as well. And so to that extent, it can be helpful, but I can't say I've reviewed specifically the research about protein intake on osteoporosis, so I can't speak to that as much. Oh, questions about where you download the text. Oh, scroll up for the link, or maybe Carla, you can put it in again if you haven't. I'm just still scrolling down the questions. Can you share any additional nutrition tips for menopause or early onset menopause? Everything I've mentioned is important, as well as nutrients to support gut and liver health. There was I think we've done a menopause, as we've done the menopause presentation for Healthy Planet. If it should be posted on the Healthy Planet, I believe, YouTube page. And if not, we should do that as a topic very soon. Thanks for all the positive feedback. Can I send the whole presentation PPT? I don't know. We don't have it a download as a PDF. I don't mind sharing that with you, but we'll have to try to find a way to get that out to you. No, the download link isn't the slides. I don't know how we share that, if it's possible to share that. I'd have to just make a few adjustments, Carla, before you sent it out. Weight loss after 60, bone mass or muscle mass? I'm not sure exactly what the question is there, but I think, if you're losing weight after 60 and you're not exercising, you're probably losing muscle. Is fasting for 24 hours a good idea? I have seen some research that suggests from time to time it can be beneficial, but that really varies depending on the individual. How about magnesium? I purchased some, was taking it at night to help me sleep. We'll do that, but found my stomach got upset. I shouldn't do that, especially the bisglycinate form is generally considered to be gentle on the stomach. If you have an intolerance to eggs, then you definitely avoid eggs. So the meal plan isn't specific to any one particular diet. Let me fast forward past the slide. Fast forward past the slide for more info. Can you please redisplay? Okay, so this is general info for socials for both natural factors and preferred. I mentioned there's the blue and white label for the creatine. And thanks for the positive feedback. Yes, try magnesium bisglycinate. Great suggestion. Any vitamins or supplements that help burn fat and boost your metabolism? Well, the mitochondrial energy formula, as I mentioned. What's the difference between NMN and NAD? So NMN is a form of vitamin B3 that you can get in food or supplements. NAD is a molecule that the body makes in response to that vitamin that helps to repair your cells. Are creatine gummies as effective as powder? I'm so glad you asked that, Kathy, because you just really can't get that much creatine into a gummy. I'm a big fan of gummies when they work, but I haven't seen any creatine gummies on the market that have more than a really small amount. You'd have to take like a whole handful of gummies to get that 5-gram level. Best magnesium test, red blood cell magnesium, if you can get it. Oh, what are your thoughts about creatine for someone who strength trains regularly but has a low dose blood thinner? Creatine doesn't have any drug interactions with blood thinners. Foods that can help hormonal imbalances for women. As I mentioned, anything that helps liver or gut, high fiber foods in particular. Does the iSure cert mean the supplement with this certification is excipient free? Oh, no, definitely not. Sometimes excipients are required as part of the manufacturing process. That is how the supplements are made. Oh, there's the handout. Thank you very much. Oh, dementia, Alzheimer's, nutrition tips. Everything I've already mentioned, but definitely that's another topic. I know that we've done that before, and I think it should be already on the YouTube website. Okay, I think I've pretty much got to everybody's questions here that pertain to the topic. There's other ones that are outside of our topic tonight. Thanks for the feedback about my book. Thanks, Gail. I'm glad that you enjoyed my book. And feedback about, question here. I heard that 1 gram of protein per pound. So that would be for a 150-pound person, 150 grams of protein per day, which is really if you've ever tried to eat more than even 100 grams of protein per day, that can be very, very challenging. That's a tough one. The metric usually is 1 gram per kilogram. All right, thanks everybody.
There's also the Q&A tab if you want to scan that.
Have I missed the Q&A tab? Okay, hold on. Thanks, Carla. Why don't I see the Q&A tab? I'm not seeing the Q&A tab. Where do I find?
Should be just along the bottom, chat, raise hand, share, and then Q&A.
I don't have raise hand.
Okay.
Or Q&A. Oh, maybe under more. Let's see under more. Okay. Yes, there's a few more here. Thanks. I missed this. Okay. Question here about muscle memory. Yes, I believe that the research suggests that exercising seems to have effects down the road. Can I gain muscle at 60? Yes, I think that Joan McDonald has showed us all that we can. I have not heard of the new all-in-one machine. Can we have a PDF email to us? I don't know if we can, I don't know how we arrange that. Ubiquinol CoQ10, as I mentioned, helps with mitochondria. You can take creatine either before or after a workout, but I think majority of people will take it before. What's the best lactose-free cottage cheese? Oh, I just did see one the other day at Healthy Planet. Was it Nordica, the brand lactose-free cottage cheese? I think it was. I love eggs, but I get tired of having them for breakfast. Yes, I hear you. That can be other animal protein kind of substitute besides turkey bacon or beef bacon. So sometimes with breakfast, just having leftovers from dinner the night before can be a way to get around breakfast fatigue. Uh, that's usually what I'll end up doing. Question here about New Zealand whey called Kaha. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that brand. And is there a good link or website that recommends specific exercise in menopause to increase muscle strength? That's a great question. And I don't know of one. I can't think of one offhand. I know Joan McDonald does have a training app, and she was certainly well into menopause when she started her journey. So she was the only resource I can think of off the top of my head would be to check out Joan McDonald's resources. Okay, I think I got all of the questions in the Q&A. Thanks for alerting me to that, Carla, because I wasn't showing up for me. All right, thanks everyone. I know we're well over time here. You guys always have lots of great questions. Really appreciate it. And yeah, well, I hope this has been helpful news you can use and that it inspires you for your fitness journey and your muscle building journey. And I'll see you again next time.